Thanks very much, and Fáilte Rómh, and thank you for all the documentation, and to the Controller and Auditor General as well, although I wasn't thanking you last night at 12 o'clock. But it's
thanking me at the same time.
Mr. Moran, I'd just like to put my, first of all, well done. The accounts, there's no issues whatsoever in relation to the Controller and Auditor General, and so it's important to place that on the record. And thank you for that. We have no issues. So then if we go into the substance and we look at your opening statement, and again, I'm not sure was it yourself, but I raised it on the last time as well. I have a great difficulty with this. I'll find it now. Here, yeah. Page 8 of your opening statement. I'm encouraged by the robust pace of the recovery in the Irish economy, with GDP increased by 6.7% last year. The increase in economic activity is broadly based and economic fundamentals are strong. Ireland remains one of the fastest growing economies in the EU. I have a huge difficulty with that statement, and then our credit ratings, which really reflect more on the agencies doing the rating when it suits them, so I put no emphasis on that whatsoever. But why I have great difficulty with this, because I just checked, and as of yesterday we had 10,378 people homeless, 6,584 adults and 3,794 children. So I cannot square that figure with that paragraph. So either I'm, what we say, ignorant or uneducated in these matters, or you're taking a very narrow view of the economy and fiscal policy. So I cannot accept that we're the fastest growing country in Europe, that we are fundamentally sound when that's our position. And I'll finish and then I'll ask the questions. In relation, we're now in a situation where the accommodation meant for tourists, hotels and B&Bs, are going to homeless people. And the accommodation meant to house our people, houses, are being used for tourists with Airbnb. You'd accept that? That's the position. And then I look at this and it's sound. I have great difficulty with that. Would you?
I mean, Deputy, we've had this conversation.
Oh, I wish we had a conversation, but we're always limited. But in any event, yeah.
I mean, the comment is on the performance of the economy in terms of the aggregate performance of the economy. I've said it already, economic fundamentals are strong. I could yet live to regret that statement, but that's sort of because I do have a very strong, however, in a couple of paragraphs later that we face new challenges. I mean, our role is to ensure that as far as we can is that the economy itself is stable, the public finances are stable and predictable, that they can generate the revenues to address the real problems that you're talking about. And I don't disagree with you in any way. As an Irish citizen, and the idea of homelessness at that level isn't
it our economic policies and that is driving that? Isn't that the fundamental problem?
Sorry, if you want to go back, at least some of the problem is the collapse in 2008, the stopping of investment that resulted from that collapse, there was no construction for a period of 5 or 6 years. All of these have contributed to exactly what you're describing. However, it is the performance of the economy that is going to generate the revenue that allows the spending on the building of the 10,000 social houses that are with the target, that provide the money to
I hear what you're telling me. I hear what you're telling me. I fundamentally disagree with you, actually, but that's for another forum. And it's difficult to wade through all of this. I appreciate all the work that's gone into it, really. I know the work that's gone into it. I appreciate it. But it's premised on a completely wrong ideology. Absolutely. Any department that can say we're sound with that level of homelessness and with the serious crisis in housing, if we look at Galway, you simply cannot get a house to rent. And the policy is forcing the market up to unsustainable levels in terms of rent. We know that. The very policy of the government HAP, the housing assistance payment, amongst the other payments, absolutely just forcing the rents up unsustainably. And I would love sometime if the Department of Finance began to look at that. And perhaps I'm taking unfair advantage of you in this, but I couldn't but, coming from a city where the housing crisis is worse than Dublin. where the health crisis is worse than anywhere, a hospital falling apart, and then tell me our economy is sound. Something wrong with that definition of an economy. In relation to specific questions, what is the second state aid case?
Sorry, Deputy?
The state aid case was Apple.
I refer to...
Yeah, a second one.
A second one.
Yeah.
Ochinish Illumina.
Ochinish Illumina. And can you just clarify for me about that, please? I remember asking you before and reading about it.
Oh,
it's actually
it's got to do with it's an excise duty case. Deputy, I can get you a very short note on it.
I would love a longer note on it.
A longer note.
I have a particular interest in it.
After all these years, there are many long notes.
No, I would longer note than short on this.
That's fair enough, Deputy.
Because it's a similar case where money is held in escrow, is it?
Oh no, sorry. That money is held on deposit. It's not an escrow. It's
Sundry Monies account.
Yeah.
But it's on deposit.
It's on deposit.
On deposit. How much money?
About 16 million.
Yeah.
That's about
68 million.
16 million.
I can try and find the
That's
figure.
okay. So we'll get a note on that. Thanks very much. Yeah. Now, in relation to the Independent Fiscal Council, are they all wise men, or are there any wise women on the council?
Yeah, there are.
Of the five, I think there are five.
Yeah, there's two females on the council, although one has just stepped down, actually. There's Michael Toty, Seamus Coffey. Michael McMahon has replaced Edith
well, just
Carney.
rather than go through the names.
So 2 of 5.
2 out of 5.
Sorry, 1 of 5 now, but if I was here 2 months ago...
So is there a vacancy at the moment?
No. Edith Carney has been replaced by Professor Michael McMahon of Oxford.
So it's 1 out of 5?
Yeah, as of
and there are no vacancies?
No.
Okay, so we're gone backwards there. We had 2 and we're gone back to 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're nominated by the Taoiseach, are they?
No, they're appointed by the Minister for Finance.
The Minister for Finance.
Yes.
He has total latitude in relation to that. So he has seen fit to appoint 4 men and 1 woman.
Well, the current minister has only appointed, I think, 1 member, because the previous minister would have appointed the others.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that clarification. And then in relation to the Fiscal Council, there was a review of that, I think in 2005, which was good, an independent review to see if it was carrying out its functions, isn't that right? And generally,
2015.
2015.
15,
yeah. And it got the thumbs up for most of it. And then I'm just going back to a question that was asked. There were a number of recommendations.
So he was referring to the recommendations to the council.
The review that was done in I'm referring to it. I'm not sure what my colleague was.
Council.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought they were referring to it.
Yeah. And that was 2015, and there were a number of recommendations made in relation to that 25, and the council in its wisdom decided not to follow 2 of them. And nobody can answer that today as to why they did.
Well, sorry, when the Deputy Burke, I think it was, I thought he was referring to recommendations that the council had given to the department. The recommendations to the council are recommendations to the council. It was an independent review, and the council is fully independent. They can choose to implement them or not.
Okay.
But we have no role, legislatively or otherwise.
But you have a memo of understanding with them, do you?
On how the forecasts are undertaken, the macroeconomic forecasts.
Right.
Okay.
But nothing in relation to recommendations like this.
Absolutely
and you're not
nothing.
in a position to clarify. Who would be in a position?
Is independent of
I understand that.
of the department. The financial statements are audited by me. They can be examined. You can call the council, and they can provide the detail in relation to each of the recommendations and
they have
the reasons
never come
why.
Before us, have they?
They haven't come before.
Before the the Budget Oversight Committee, after each fiscal assessment report, excuse me, which is twice a year.
Would that be right? That they can be before this committee?
Okay. All right. Now, I just look at the accounts in relation to, I think most of the question, one was the legal, and that's been answered in relation.
Deputy, just for information on the point about the Ochinish Illumina case, it dates back to 2005, I think was the first direction of the EU Commission. There was a subsequent direction as well in 2007, and a total of 14.5 million euros has been recovered from Auchinleach Illumina. I think, in fact, over the time it has gone over and back. The money has been repaid and repaid again as the decisions went for and against the state. It's not a very satisfactory position.
The case would have opened a long time before that. That's the point where you had a direction to collect the money in 2005.
So the money has been collected, 14.5 million. It's sitting in an account. It's presumably getting whatever interest it's getting, is it?
Well, it's on deposit, and I think that was a relatively recent move. It had been kept in the central bank, but now because the central bank is charging interest on deposits, rather than paying interest on deposits, it had to be put into a commercial.
It's very similar, albeit on a much smaller scale, to the escrow issue around the Apple money.
Well, that's what I started out asking, and I was told no, but maybe I put it badly. So the money is held there, 14.5 million. It's now, the situation has improved in that it's making a slight amount of interest, is it?
Yeah, or certainly not losing money.
Certainly not being charged by the central bank.
Yeah.
It becomes more fascinating, really, doesn't it, the whole banking thing? Yeah. Central bank giving interest.
Well, I think in the early part of the period when it was on deposit in the central bank, there was interest accruing.
Okay.
But because interest rates over a period declined so significantly and went into negative territory, I think it was necessary then, and it's a decision of the departments to put it in a commercial bank where some interest, but again very small interest.
Very small.
Just as Captain Officer, I couldn't preside over a situation where we're actually losing money by holding it on deposit.
But maybe Mr. Tobin's suggestion of putting it in the post office. He didn't say that, Mr. Tobin, but you recommended the post office.
I would never give legal advice.
No, you're
give financial advice.
Maybe you should.
I thought you already did. You know.
Okay. Just what is the position with the case? Where are we? Have you got an update on it?
I just happened to mention it to one of the guys recently, and I think we're at a point where this might be concluded in the next very shortly.
Do you think we could have a note on that through the chair? Is that possible?
Yeah, so we'll give you a note.
Lovely, great. Okay. What was the other thing I wanted to ask in relation to the EU? And the Controller and Auditor General did a special report on that, and he'd only one recommendation. I thought it was a very good recommendation. I don't always agree with them, but that we have a consolidated annual accounts, is it, on an annual basis? And
well, a report, I think, Deputy. I suppose the value of a report over a set of accounts is that you can look at a longer time period. And I think the sums involved and the complexity is so great that really something like the debt report was what I had in mind, or indeed the special report that we produced. You know, just repeating that on an annual basis or something like it, I think could be a useful.
How long ago is that report? When did you do that report?
I completed that report, I think, at the end of. December 18,
December
just
18.
at the end of
so
18.
You've had a little while to think about it, and you've had consultation on it, and you've come back still. You're going to think more about it? You're going to do a scoping exercise?
No, we've just, what we've sort of moved, to be fair, is to just look at what this involves, to take our EU policy people, accounts and finance people, and start to scope what this would look like. I mean, I have no dispute with the controller's view that this would be more informative, more transparent, and so on and so forth. It's find the space. But I am, and there's projects that we're doing around the government's balance sheet as well. Trying to do a consolidated view of that, to move to bring on some of the assets that we know currently see, and then do an intertemporal exercise with it as well. So there's a range of things we're doing. So just say we will, and hopefully before I'm back next year, or when I'm back, kind of say what progress we've made on that.
Well, that's good if there is progress, because I didn't get that feeling from the answer. Your answer was that would involve considerable administrative undertaking.
I haven't changed.
And then you've come back in due course in your report here. And what my question is a number. When did the scoping exercise start? Has it started?
We've literally only commenced.
So we might make. In due course, we just see. I have started an internal scoping exercise. Who's doing that? Or
it will
when
be
did it start?
our EU budget people, the people who actually do the policy around it, and it will be the finance and accounting functions, the corporate side of the department.
So was the start date? Was there? When did it start? When is the completion date? Okay, when I read it, and as somebody here and reads, it makes utter sense to have a report like that, and you can read it, you can see the money coming in, you can see what it's been used for. And so, have you enough staff to do it? I mean, I see that have you enough staff in your department?
Well, this is one of the challenges. You know, kind of if you take the people who will be doing this, you know, the European team will be dealing with the MFF and the negotiation of that, and it's carving out time from what they're doing to do it. The sort of accounting corporate function, we've got things like financial management, shared services going on, but we will address the resources. We do have, and that's definitely just to pick up on that, we do have a challenge around staffing. We have not been able to hold at our core level over the past number of years.
You have it here. Recruitment did not progress. You have it here in your opening statement. Yeah. So you're down. Recruitment did not progress at the pace anticipated. Yeah. At the year end, staff numbers stood at 310, but the pay bill estimate was based on a head count. So why is that happening?
So there's a number of reasons. We have, and it's our turnover rate for the last 4 or 5 years has averaged around 20%. So 20% of the staff turnover every year. Is
there a breakdown of the grades in relation to that?
We can get you
absolutely
get you all of that. We've sort of detailed reported, but the bottom line, what's happening is that civil service is expanding. Most of these people are not leaving the civil service. They come in, they stay with the department. We invest actually quite a amount of money in terms of their skill set, and they get promoted into the wider civil service. So of that 20%, let's say on average, there's only about 4% actually leave and go to the private sector or something like that, and the rest go into the wider civil service. And that's presenting us as a management team with an enormous challenge.
Yeah, except when various bodies come before us and it's for governance and accountability and look into, it saves money in the end if there are proper procedures in place and if there's proper openness and accountability in place. And it seems the report, the one recommendation, would add to openness and accountability.
And
certainly for the public.
And Deputy, I am acknowledging that, okay. and that we will put
something in place.
You know, yeah.
Okay, I'm almost finished. Am I running out of time?
Okay.
Am I okay? Now, climate change. Where does one go with climate change? An emergency has been declared, albeit in the Taoiseach's absence on the day, but I'm sure he's embraced it since. And again, the report was just noted. It was noted. It was the amendments that changed it. I'm not asking you to comment politically, but that was the background. That report was being noted before the dawn. So there seems to me a certain lack of urgency in relation to I use the word cognitive dissonance. We're one of 2 countries to declare a climate emergency, and yet we're one of 2 countries to be going to miss our targets. It was the amendments from the various parties that forced the Dáil, and that's the position now it has been declared. Where are you building that into your forecasts? Where are you building in the report that came out, the biodiversity report? They did a whole section on the financial implications of what's happening with the loss of biodiversity. The governor of the central bank has talked about if we don't deal with it, it's going to be worse. I'm paraphrasing the man. So where are you building it in? Where is the...
Most of what we do in terms of fiscal projection doesn't go on out more than 3 or 4 or 5 years. You know, in terms of climate change agenda, that's very, very short. Just to be clear on that.
Well, it's not actually, because we've one window of opportunity, I think, of 10 to 12 years. That's all we've left to take action. So,
where we're concentrating our work, you know, is the bits that we can contribute, and that is, and I've already referred to it, and it is a profoundly difficult issue. Is pricing? Is to use pricing of carbon through the tax to create a set of incentives that encourage people to actually use less carbon intense fuels. Yeah. Just to bear with me, yeah, that itself generates then the revenues that allows you to do other things, many of the things that Deputy Murphy has referred to, and get the balance of that correct. And that's why we have a public consultation out, recommendation committee that we do so, and we have done. And, we'll move from there. We've also got the SRI to do some sort of more medium-term research for us. And John, do you want to give a sense of?
Sure. So we asked the ESRI to look at the impact of carbon going to 95 euros per tonne by 2030. The report was published in March. And what we asked them to do, and what they have done, is to look at the impact of that on the economy. Okay, the impact is to reduce GDP by between 0.5 and a percentage point, and what the impact would also be on carbon emissions. Okay. It's still work in progress. It does reduce carbon emissions, but actually the amount would be insufficient to reach the various targets. And what we were concerned about is the impact, the distributional impact of that, because different people will be affected in different ways. So we're actually working with the ESRI now using the switch model to try and model the impact on different deciles, different household segments, and we intend to publish that research. But as the Secretary General mentioned, this is the one lever that's available to the Department of Finance. It's the tax lever, and I think possibly it was yourself who mentioned, or maybe Deputy Murphy, that it has to be, it's much wider than tax. It has to be a whole.
Absolutely, and that was my question really, is the risk. I leave the tax for another day and the debate on it. I think it's foolish. I think it will divide people, and it will take the focus of where we should be, which the people have asked us to acknowledge the climate change and deal with it. And my question to the department was, where are you looking at that emergency? How are you building it into your forecast?
Well, I say, by trying to do the analysis of the SRI around what the projections, the impacts on the economy of doing these type of things is important. But just Deputy, I think it's the chair of the Climate Commission, Professor Fitzgerald, kind of often refers to the point that to retrofit all the houses, the existing stock of houses, is €50 billion. And we have to find the means by which you can do that over the next 20, 30 years. And that is going to require a lot of private money, but also public support to do that. The government, as I understand it, over the next number of weeks is due to publish its strategy around the actions and the plans, and I would hope that perhaps a lot of your answers to the questions you're posing will be in that. Just on the,
I'm finished. Just on the liquidation of the IRBC and again before us, I don't accept what you're saying at all. We saw the plenary summons at the time. Someone, I think Mr. Tobin, unfortunately said we'd have to ask them their motivation. I didn't realise there was a second case. The first case, we did see the plenary summons. It was simply looking for accountability. At the time, we awaited, I'm not sure if it was yourself or somebody else that was there, talked about wait for the statement of claim. It seems absolutely absurd that somebody would have to go to court to bring accountability. They weren't looking for anything for themselves. They were simply setting out what they thought were the necessary oversight mechanisms. So I leave you with that. I think the Department of Finance should look at that a citizen has to go to the court to get the proper oversight mechanisms. Thanks very much.